What's up, and welcome back to Nowstalgia Pod Part 2. This is Pat Sheehan, joined by my co-host Dave Martis. And Dave, jumping in for the second time this week because there's just too much content to catch up on.
Married to the game, baby. Gotta do it.
So if you haven't had a chance to check out our music podcast from this week, we covered a lot of big albums. Drake, Kanye, Lil Sims, Lord. A lot of good stuff there. Check those individual breakouts out or just the entire show episode. Leave a comment. And you can also listen to that if you're not watching on youtube.com/nostalgiapod, on soundcloud.com/nostalgiapod. Dave, there's so much stuff to catch up on. We had to break it up into two. We did music. Today we're doing TV and movies. Not as much to catch up on, but I think some big things that we wanted to touch base on, check in on. We're going to start today checking in on, I think, one of our favorite comedies, What We Do in the Shadows, back for season 3, dropping 2 episodes on premiering on FX. I believe it was last Thursday, and then FX on Hulu on Friday. That's how I consumed it. What'd you think of the season 3 premiere?
I quite enjoyed it. Just more what we do in the shadows. Nothing out of the realm of expectations for the show, but that's quite all right because this show is hilarious. Definitely the funniest show on TV. They just cram so many jokes and laugh out loud moments into every minute. I don't even know what's like in the conversation for it because I think the other highly hyped comedy these days, Ted Lasso, is not on the level of jokes of what we do in the shadows. That's for sure.
Yeah, you think about the other show I was thinking might be in the conversation for best comedy is something like I Think You Should Leave, which check out that breakout
Sure.
review if you're watching this. Um, I Think You Should Leave is tough because it's a sketch show, so there's no continuity from the previous 5 minutes to the next 5 minutes. It's just something different. New setup, new thing. What We Do in the Shadows. If you go back and check our first season review, I thought it was pretty good, but I wasn't totally blown away with it. But the way that the show's been able to build off itself, and like you said, it ties in so many different jokes and so many things that have uh, paid off from earlier seasons at this point. It's really operating at the level of a lot of our favorite sitcoms from the past, things like Parks and Rec, The Office, shows like that. It really feels like it's on the path to potentially be on par with those sorts of things. But I wonder how many people are actually watching this. I don't see a lot of discourse about it, which is a little disappointing.
So
Do you
it's
talk to people about it a lot?
its viewership did go up 100% season 2 to season 1. So that's a positive sign. We'll see how season 3 does. But yeah, it definitely feels like it's more like the in the know person's comedy.
Mhm.
But yeah, I mean, Good Place is gone. Veep is gone. Silicon Valley's gone. Ted Lasso is more about the vibes than the actual jokes. If you're into comedy, you got to be watching this. It's just
Mhm.
it is what it is, you know. I mean, just it's the same kind of stuff, but like the well is still quite full of finding humor in vampires not understanding the modern day world and modern culture and stuff like that. It's just the gift that keeps on giving. It's a lot of really simple observations and premises, but it's just so effective.
Yeah, it does work really well. It, I'm just trying to think about like what's another even comedy that's really popped off this year. Something like Hacks. Just isn't on the
Sure.
same
Yeah.
level of jokes. And
That's more of
that's a
a
season
comedy
one,
drama than anything.
right? So it really feels like a singular show. For this time particularly, talking about the way that the premise pays off, I feel like in the second episode of this season that paid off really well with Nandor having everybody use the duplicating cloak to go try to
Cloak of
get a date.
duplication.
Yeah, to try to go get a date with the girl at the front desk of the gym he goes to sometimes, which also him talking about how they used to work out in the Middle Ages and test their strength, and then seeing him at the gym now is just a really that was a great bit. But I loved that running bit of each person taking a shot at getting a date with that girl.
Yeah, yeah, I don't think she's into guys. And she actually wasn't into guys. It was so good. Um, like, they kind of hinted at this, I think, and I saw this remarked upon in some press that it's going to continue the origins of Colin Robinson in terms of the origins of like energy
Yeah,
vampires and how they're different. I mean, anything revolving Colin Robinson is good with me because it's
gold.
just fucking the funniest shit ever. Yeah. The
Yeah,
fact that they're like in a leadership position in the council,
yep,
great. I'm sure that's gonna go well. I love the conflict they had with some younger vampires. Bernie Bro esque.
yep.
More anti-establishment folks. That was really great comedy as well.
Yeah, I loved when Colin Robinson comes in and the other energy vampires like, oh my god, Colin Robinson, like, it's just totally like, I've looked up to you for years. You're a legend. I loved that just because you never really see him in that
Wait, are you draining me right
sort of
now? No,
space.
I wouldn't do
Yeah. So good. Um, yeah, I mean, if you had to pick a favorite moment from the first two episodes, anything that stands out?
that. Good question. I guess it's everything with the cloak. You know,
Yeah.
especially once Laszlo fails. Um, yeah, but I mean, this and actually, I didn't know about this, but the way they make the show actually is that they do tons and tons of bits. A lot of it's scripted, and they'll eventually do more takes that are less scripted than the original idea, and they just
Mhm,
really like whittle it down. So there's so much left on the cutting room floor with the
mhm.
show, and it's actually very intentional, very thoughtful in terms of what makes the episode, and that's cool to hear. And you can tell that like it's very considered because they can't jump the shark. You can't get too dumb,
Yeah,
and I think that's always on their mind. That's what they've said anyway. The
yeah.
showrunner and Jermaine Clement and whatnot.
I loved all the stuff with Guillermo in the first episode, how he's in the prison but can get out anytime he wants, and it's
Giving
just
him raw chicken,
yeah,
just
and he's
not
just
knowing how humans eat.
hilarious. That I loved that. Loved seeing Taika show up in that video from the head vampire council. I thought
Right,
that was like a nice little nod to the origins of the show.
right. Especially because
Um,
he's less involved with like the producing of the show um,
yep.
than Clement is, so that's cool to see.
But I think definitely my favorite line from the first one, and I texted it to you immediately, was Laszlo. And when they're picked to be like the head of this, the Staten Island or tri-state area vampire council, is saying, "I didn't become a vampire to be a bureaucrat. I became a vampire to suck blood and fuck for the rest of my life, for the rest of eternity." Just an
Yeah.
amazing line. And Matt Berry is just like so good at delivering the
Mhm.
lines as Laszlo, and then him going into the whole porn thing at that like
Right.
council place, just amazing stuff from him. So
Oh god.
Jackie Daytona remains one of my favorite
Yeah.
episodes of TV from last year. So
I wonder if they bring back Jackie Daytona one day. Season 4 is going into production this fall. It's already been renewed. So maybe down the line, Jackie Daytona is going to come back in some fashion. I wouldn't be surprised.
God, I hope so. So good stuff. If you enjoy comedies, and who doesn't, I think you have to be tuning into this show. But Dave, why don't we switch gears a little bit and move on to a Netflix show that it wasn't really something on my radar necessarily. I actually had a colleague though bring it up to me shortly before it premiered. I work in higher education as a mental health counselor, for those who don't know, and they were like, "Oh man, there's a show on Netflix. It's a comedy with Sandra Oh, talking about higher education. We gotta watch it." Uh, and the chair premiered 2 weeks ago now, and
Yeah, it was the end of August, August 20th. It's a few weeks ago. Yeah.
yeah, been some even going on 3 weeks now, and I thought the chair was pretty good. Only 6 episodes, short mini series. I felt like the chair had a lot of pots on the stove and a lot of stuff it was trying to touch on, and never really got there with a lot of it. But I think I give it a lot of credit for trying, I guess, is where I was
hmm
with it. But it left me, I think, a little dissatisfied because it did feel like a lot of things were like half baked or not fully formed in terms of story arc. What
Yeah,
about you?
yeah. It's one of those things where like 6 episodes, 3 hours. It just needed more time to pay off everything it was trying to pay off. Some things
Mhm.
still did pay off, some things less so. So yeah, it's fine. But I also didn't have really any expectations about it. I just kind of like knew like a month or so beforehand. Oh, there's a Sandro Netflix show coming out. A show Sandro made because she found something she could fit into her schedule between Killing Eve seasons. That's basically why
Hmm.
this even exists. Created
Hmm.
by Amanda P. It's like, huh, all right, sure, Sandro, TV legend, why not? And it's it's pleasant enough, but I guess 'cause I didn't have any expectations for it, like, I don't mind, and also because it was so short, um, it's okay that it's, like, only so, if it was, like, way longer and also, underwhelming, I'd be way less pleased, so it's all good.
Yeah. It's the sort of thing where, um, like you said, it's kind of like found money, where it's like, can I really be that mad that I found $5 instead of 20 type of thing.
Mhm.
But I think where it really sets up, in terms of themes, you have Jay Duplass's character as this um, professor dealing with the loss of his wife, daughter going off to college, being alone, dealing with seems like some alcohol, substance abuse issues. Um, you have Sandra Oh taking over as the first female chair of this department, and uh, a lot of the story arcs, at least as the season goes on, are about what it means to be a female professor in this field that's been dominated by males for so long, pushing back against the establishment, trying to bring in more people of color, diversity in the workplace. And we're not even touching on some of the like Duchovny type stuff, that comes about later in the season in terms of like how schools try to balance this idea of needing to intrigue students and what actually intrigues them, and keeps them coming back and being paying customers. And then there's all the stuff that goes on with was it Holland Taylor, who
Yes.
as a aging female professor, has like Title IX concerns, has some workplace environment concerns. you know, I feel like a lot of those things get touched on, brought up, um, but never fully like totally executed. Which uh, I I really applaud it, because a lot of these issues are things that you don't see represented nearly as well as they are in the show. But I just wish there was a little more, I think, like resolution or point to them. But definitely a very ambitious show in terms of theme, which is pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the stuff with Holland Taylor, the stuff with Bob Balaban as well,
Mhm.
these older colleagues struggling to or older academics struggling to find their place in a evolving higher education landscape. More meat in the bone for sure, but because it's Holland Taylor and Bob Balaban, it's still like largely pretty good. I would have liked a lot more time with the stuff regarding, I think the most important themes, the stuff like you said about representation
Mhm.
and tokenism in
Yeah.
higher ed, you know, uh, and also because like I don't know, like J. Duplass's Bill, like I didn't find him like the most sympathetic guy. He's just kind of like a drag for most of the season because he's just beating himself up constantly and fucking up.
Yeah.
And it's like Sandro's character, uh, Ji Yoon. It's like you kind of feel bad for her being dragged down a little bit. So I think just like the acting is still strong enough that like even if like thematically not everything comes together, it's still a pleasant enough watch.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's definitely a pleasant and easy watch. It goes by pretty quick. Um, Benioff and Weiss. This is their first like executive producing, I think, for Netflix. Is that right?
Yeah, so that's right because they have the deal. I immediately just jumped to this. One of them's married to Amanda P. That's probably why this happened,
Oh, there
right?
we go.
I
It has
believe
to be
David Benioff's
Benioff,
married to
right?
Amanda P. Yeah.
Yeah,
So either way, cool. Do your thing. But yeah, we'd like
Dave
to see
Benioff.
Benioff and Weiss. Let's get to it, guys. Come on, let's
Yeah,
get working.
I know, but we really want to see them produce some like really fantastical type stuff, right? or
Yes.
like some really grand stuff. So
Something.
let's hope we get something a little bit bigger from them in the near future. But if you have time and want to check out the chair, I think it's like we said, easy watch, ambitious, and I don't think you'll leave too disappointed. I didn't find it super funny, but
No.
I think Sandra Oh has like a very specific type of like comedic performance that's a little dry and
Hmm.
um, you
Physical
know
at times.
exactly, yeah, good way to put it. Why don't we move on though to something that was unexpected for me to say the least, and uh, you know, as someone that just watched this very recently, I'm still sitting with what to make of Annette. Um, wow, I mean, I go back and forth between feeling like this is like a work of genius and being like, what the fuck did I just watch?
Mm.
Type of thing.
It's a little
It's
bit of
this
both, I think.
Yeah, it's like this like rock opera musical type movie starring Adam Driver and Marion Cotillard, and um, it tells the story of Henry, who's this comedian, I guess, who's not. I
Mhm.
don't find it very funny. Also, kind of like Sandro, I guess, and
The
uh,
audience thought he was funny.
apparently, yeah, and Marion Cotillard is she? Her name's Anne in the movie, right?
Yeah, she's like a opera
Yeah,
singer, some kind of soprano.
yeah, and they have this, they're both very famous in France or Italy or wherever they are, have this relation. I think it's France, and they have this relationship, have a daughter, and then things start to go awry. I guess I won't spoil the movie too much for those who want to watch it on Netflix, but it's definitely a weird watch, I'd say.
Hmm.
Would you agree with that, Dave?
Yeah, definitely, definitely. This played a con, had a limited release, hit Amazon Prime Video on August 20th in the US. Latest film from Leo Carax, who's a renowned French director. First movie since 2012, and also his first English language feature film. And I haven't seen any of his other films, but this is definitely strange, right? Because it's largely sung through. Like you said, it's a musical. There's the band Sparks, the Sparks Brothers, of which Edgar Wright just released a documentary about. Sparks does all the music throughout this, as well as I think did some story concepts. And it's actually not like a super complicated story, but I guess like you have to like really like follow it through song a lot of times to keep up with it. And then perhaps the most striking thing about it is that when the titular Annette comes into the story, the child of Driver and Cotillard's marriage, Annette's played by a wooden marionette puppet, which is kind of like impossible to look away from, obviously very
Yeah.
specific
Bit off-putting for sure.
and also weird, you know? And there's a lot of like absurdist like dream sequences or like flashes of imagery and stuff throughout this story, and it's just very unique, and that's why I think it's definitely worth recommending at least to check it out. I feel like it's something that, like, for me, I was actually quite grabbed in the beginning, and perhaps I was a little less into it towards the end, but I really liked the beginning with that "So May We Start" Spark song where they're
Mm,
all singing together and like walking around and stuff, and then like you get like Driver's first comedy set when he's performing and everyone still likes him. Like a
mhm.
lot of that was like really engaging just because like I don't really know what's coming. Um, but yeah, like there's a lot going on for a story that's actually on its surface kind of straightforward.
Yeah, there's certainly like a lot of metaphor throughout. I mean, I think even the idea of Annette as a marionette doll is a pretty like on the nose metaphor, especially in the premise of the story and the way that Driver as her father uses Annette and uses her talents. It's interesting because I think actually what makes the movie great is exactly what I said in the beginning. How you go back and forth between being like, "Wow, this is really unique and really interesting and singular," it feels like, but also being like, "What the fuck am I watching?" But not wanting to look away a lot of the time. Um, it definitely, I think, isn't for everybody. I think that there's a lot of like cat. Like we're gonna talk about. Shang-Chi in a second. And I think a lot of the people who probably went to go see Shang-Chi, who are like big Marvel heads, aren't necessarily also going to be fans of a movie like Annette. Um, but
You think?
yeah, but I do think uh, what kind of is great about this movie is it kind of brings Driver into this role that's super familiar from his character on Girls. Because this is basically the same guy he played on Girls. I'm forgetting the name of his character on that.
Adam?
I think it might have actually been Adam.
Yeah.
I feel like my guts tell me that's the right one, but you know, Adam is this like weird guy who's super like dark, but also like charming and
Mhm.
witty and people like, but then has this really like uh, quick to anger attitude that kind of drives a lot of the conflict between him and the oh boy, I'm trying to think of Hannah on the
Yeah,
show.
leaned on. Mhm.
Jeez, I haven't thought about Girls in a long time, but those early seasons of Girls were great. But I feel like this is very like up Driver's alley. I don't know about the singing, obviously, but I think this
Mhm.
type of like male character is someone he can
Yeah,
really sink into.
and the performance that Driver gives is just kind of a classic Adam Driver performance. He imbues so much physicality into the
Yeah,
role, and this is one of his, I think, like least likable characters. Like from the jump, you never really connect with them, give him, and he only gets more unlikable as the story progresses. Um, yeah, him and Cotillard did most of the singing actually in this film. Um, and it's kind of cool to see Driver do something like this, like because he's actually a producer on this movie. Funny
yeah,
enough, and at this point, he's got 3 Star Wars checks in the bank account. He's already worked with such a who's who of talented directors, adding characters to the list at this point. But he can just take these kind of swings if he wants to, because why not? And I love to see that. Obviously, Cotillard and Carrick's working together makes sense. They're both French. Um, so yeah, I mean, just cool to see something outside the box because not a lot of stuff like this gets made, and perhaps Driver's contributions to the film helped get this made. And obviously, happy to see that happen.
yeah, for sure. Just a weird thing. Did you find yourself really like feeling for Annette as a doll in the story? Did you feel like that was effective?
Eh, n- no, because I feel like a lot of stuff with Annette's like she's haunting
Yeah.
Driver, haunting Henry with the singing of
Yep.
his now dead wife. It's like spoiler, sorry, but like yeah, it's like Annette's like the side piece, right?
Yeah.
That's why I actually like the beginning of the part of the movie first before Annette shows up. Just like the whole like, the courtship of them and just kind of seeing everything, and I think the songs are better in the beginning. So yeah, there's a lot to it, and
For
it's
sure.
definitely something that some people will just completely dislike and be completely out on from the jump, and some people will just really love. But I'm kind of in the middle on it.
Yeah. I think I find myself in the middle, leaning towards liking it, but obviously not loving it. I think the marionette puppet worked in the sense of sometimes the way like the shoulders slump, just like naturally on a marionette doll, like the scene after, spoilers from I guess here on out when Driver kills what's his name, Simon Helberg's character, the uh, arrangementist or whatever it is, uh, and he comes back and Annette had been awake and kind of knew the whole thing had gone on. The way that her like shoulders and that marionette doll just kind of slumps, I felt like like a really like a sense of like sadness for the doll, which I thought was kind of strange. But a lot of the other time, you're right, it was just more of like a haunting type feel. And I don't know if that was exactly what Leo Carrick is going for. I think so in terms of the hauntingness. I don't know about the like like empathy for a doll. But then you obviously have the switch at the very end when Annette is visiting her father in prison. What did you think about that choice?
It was cool to see like young Annette as an actor singing
Yeah,
with Driver. I like that one.
I agree. I thought that was a pretty good touch at the end.
Hmm.
So yeah, if you like movies and like weirdness, check it out. I think you go
And
ahead.
there's also the viral moment of Adam Driver singing while performing Cunnilingus. So If maybe that'll get you to watch it.
Is that a viral moment? I haven't seen that.
Oh yeah, there was like a piece on the Cut, piece on Vulture.
Oh
It's like a whole
boy.
thing. Obviously, it's like
Oh
viral in the
god.
sense that viral for people that have watched Annette. It's not. It's a blockbuster film or anything.
Right, right. Oh god. Yeah. Him on stage a lot of time is pretty just wild. So,
Oh yeah,
all right. Well, Dave, it's time to get to the big one. Big one.
big one.
Shang-Chi, which, he could have thought of a different name other than Sean. Really. Yeah. Be a little more creative. But uh Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings, is that the official name?
That's right. Not 9, not 11, but 10.
Well, and the Ten Rings is a bit of a callback to some of the stuff in Iron Man 2 and 3. I think they're kind of
Iron Man
mentioned
3 in
as this,
particular. Yeah.
yeah, terrorist
And, well,
organization.
we'll get to that. There's a lot of retconning and righting of wrongs on Marvel's
Yeah.
part in this film.
And I think really the place to start with this is the Marvel's take on a Asian superhero, and it's a primarily Asian cast. I can't say fully Asian. You have Ben Kingsley, uh,
Hmm.
and I think there might be one. Oh, I guess you get like Ruffalo at certain points,
Cameos. Yeah.
but that's yeah.
The
But
the guy with the blade arm is white.
yeah, yeah, he's what's he in the movies like Roman? Something I don't know, can't
Right.
remember, but something
Well,
like
it's
that.
it's only the fourth Hollywood film since 1993 to have a predominantly Asian cast. We, of course, talked about this a few years back with Crazy Rich Asians, but this is continuing that trend in terms of Asian representation, which is great. And I think on Marvel's part, it's also uh, important because of Marvel's past history with Asian culture, Asian themes. Remember Doctor Strange, the Ancient One, rather than cast perhaps a stereotypical old Asian man character, they decided to cast a white woman, Tilda Swinton, instead. You know,
Mhm.
um, you mentioned Iron Man 3, the Mandarin, not actually the Mandarin, played by Ben Kingsley, an actor character, but kind of just a way to not even attempt something. Right? Just we know, let's not do representation at all. Let's do something else. Let's not even do it. Let's pick uh, Aldrich Killian by Guy Pearce and have Kingsley, and then in everyone's mind, it's perhaps an Asian stereotype anyway, the unknown of it all, right? So
Mhm.
um, there's a lot of, I think, things that are riding on this film coming into being on Marvel's part, and there's a lot of, I think, apprehension from Asian audiences, from Chinese audiences about doing Shang-Chi correct, doing it well, because there's also a very racist history of the origin of this character on the comic side of things due to the father figure of the titular Shang-Chi, who was known as Fu Manchu, just a very racist, tropey yellow peril example that was unfortunately very common in the 70s and whatnot. So thankfully, they largely avoided that by kind of retconning and composite charactering the Mandarin villain character and the Fu Manchu Shang-Chi's father character into this new singular character played by Tony Leung. So I think for the most part, they did a really good job. And, a few years ago, they might not have done as good of a job, but hats off to them. I think they definitely come a long way, at least.
Yeah, I think you said it well that Tony Long really being at the center of this, I think is the right place to start in doing it justice to a lot of, because in a way this is supposed to be kind of a love letter to a lot of like Hong Kong style movies.
Right.
And I think maybe we'll get a little bit more into that, but I think having someone who, for those who aren't aware of Tony Leung as a actor over in China, and I think
Mhm.
probably just for Asian films in general, he's kind of regarded as like the George Clooney mashed up with Brad Pitt of like
Yeah.
his generation of actors over there. So he's a big deal, So getting him to
Huge.
star as the father in this, I think, is a great place to start.
This is actually his first Hollywood movie.
That's
He,
crazy, actually.
yeah, he had apparently been with a Western agent for like 16 years, but he had not done a Hollywood movie until now. Obviously,
Hmm.
most famous for doing a lot of Wong Kar-wai movies, such as the Grandmaster and Chungking Express. He also is one of the stars of Internal Affairs, which is what Scorsese's Departed is based off of. Yeah, just a complete, screen legend in Hong Kong cinema, and his gravitas, his just natural acting ability, just what he does with his eyes, like he just completely raises
Mhm.
the ceiling and the floor of Shang-Chi and the Ten Rings, and steals the whole movie. Honestly,
Yeah, I completely agree. I think every scene that him and Simon Liu or Simu Liu
yeah.
um share in the movie is just like it almost feels exactly like the kind of like actors that they are at the stage of their career, because Tony Liu is so powerful and confident in every scene. And Simu Liu, while I think he gave a pretty good performance, feels like a bit timid and feels almost like a bit overmatched in some of the scenes with him. And it's noticeable for sure.
Yeah, it is. It is, and that's the thing too. Is I would say Tony Leung's Wenwu slash Mandarin character, uh, one of the strongest Marvel villains, because it's really more of an anti-hero character in the movie. Thematically, is sort of focused on like his failures as a father and his desires to reunite with his love, and it's like there's just so much, I think, like true like dramatic stakes that is also executed on so well because Lung's such a great actor that you don't get that in most Marvel movies, you know? So this is I really love the movie, and I just think his performance and how his character is so central to the whole script is kind of the key thing with the film. Because like you said, I think Simu Liu, great story, him getting cast in this role. He tweeted a joke about people hating on doubting the box office of the film, and it was a stock image featuring him because he used to be an actor in stock images. Obviously, he had a long road to getting to this point. Good for him, but he definitely, I think, doesn't quite have the dramatic chops for those
Yeah.
scenes, right? And I think that's okay. 'Cause at the end of the day, like there's still a ceiling, cap on a Marvel film when it comes to drama.
Hmm.
Um, and thankfully, Lou more than matches everything needed on the physical side of things, the action side of things. That's great. But yeah, man, I was just so blown away by everything with Lung's character. I think it's so good. Like even
Yeah.
every like his love, right? Like we get that scene, one of the best scenes in the beginning of the movie, right, where he goes to the village Ta Lao, right? He's like so self-possessed with trying to get more power, and he has nothing left to achieve, and that's where he meets his soon-to-be love. And it's one of the sexiest scenes in Marvel, which says something
Hmm.
because there's very little sensuality in the MCU. It's very stale and sterile usually, right? It's always been a big criticism, so they managed to actually convey that in a good way too, because again, like Tony Lung, all he has to do is look at you in a certain way, and like you get the feeling. Oh man,
Yeah.
so good.
No, I agree that that first scene where they're what's that? It's Wuxia, right? Is how you pronounce it? The
Yeah,
fighting
like
style.
Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, that kind of thing.
Exactly. Yeah, and the way that it's pretty much just like a dance between them as they're fighting, and just like the way that they're looking at each other, and it starts off very like confrontational, and like they soften as they go, and fight more is just really really well done. I feel like that whole like opening scene in that style is or I guess opening montage explaining like the legend of the 10 rings, and as the stories being told to little I don't know if it tells you who the story is being told to. Maybe it's you as a viewer. Now I'm thinking about it,
Yeah, good
but
point.
I think it's just really like a great opening. And I think the things that work really well for me in the movie, because I really like the movie too, but I definitely think there's some moments that fall flat and some things that maybe didn't need to be included. um the things I think work really well, the martial arts hand to hand combat in it is really awesome. That bus scene where the blade guy comes out for the first time and
Hmm.
he like fights with the jacket, amazing. Like maybe one of the best choreographed fight scenes in the MCU to date.
I
Um,
would say it's easily a top tier. Marvel action set piece.
100%. It's fantastic. I think a lot of the fight scenes, like I think about the one on the rafters too, as they're trying to escape
Mhm.
the fight club, as a really memorable and well done choreographed fight scene as well. Um, I think when you get into something like the silly stuff, like Aquafina's character Katie, I think at times felt just kind of like roped in for comedic effect. Same
Right,
with like
especially
Ben
towards the
Kingsley's
end.
character. Yeah.
Mhm.
Same with Ben Kingsley's character. I mean, definitely got a lot of laughs, but also just felt like, was he really necessary to the story in a lot of ways? I guess I wasn't sure about that. Um, but I think what's at the heart of this as a family story, a father son, father daughter, dealing with grief, what it means to like move on and to like look up to a father, but also like take over that role in the family. I think all that stuff really works really well, but I think it just got bogged down by a little too many things here and there, I guess is
Yeah,
probably what I'm saying.
well, it's got a Marvel ass Act 3, you know?
True. Yeah.
Like, I saw someone say that this movie would be even better if it cost half as much, and
Hmm.
just because the best action is in the beginning when it's more hand to hand, like you said, the bus set piece is incredible. That's where the revelation of Shang-Chi's powers or his abilities, and he's like fighting people on the bus, right? And like he takes off his jacket, like catch someone, very reminiscent of like a Jackie Chan action set piece, right? Like almost like a bit of physical comedy while fighting.
Hmm.
But it just seems so thoughtful, and it's also really well staged, right? Like it's not a lot of like quick cutting and stuff. And I think hats off to Destin Daniel Cretton, who has not made an action movie before he made this. Um, And I think like thematically, story wise, everything still made sense throughout. But I think it might have been stronger if Tony Lung's Wenwu wasn't killed by a soul sucking demon of the deep. Like it was, I don't know, like it made sense. And like I like how at the end, like he goes to full circle and he gives his son the rings. He realizes how he fucked up in the end. Like it all tracked, but maybe we didn't need this like long protracted fight against two CGI beasts, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, then again, we kind of get that kind of thing one way or another in every Marvel movie, regardless.
Yep.
So at least that it all made sense thematically and dramatically. So I'm not too critical of it. But yeah, I mean, the action's really awesome, and
Yeah.
and I actually liked Aquafina as like the sidekick character just because I thought her and Simu Liu had good chemistry, really funny stuff. I
Hmm.
thought in the beginning with the karaoke scene, which is then called back at the
Yeah.
end of the film, really good. Also, a nice nod to Asian culture, of which karaoke is very popular.
Mhm.
That's really good. But you're right, like her necessity as the sidekick kind of wanes once the story
Mhm.
gets more international. So I hear that. The Ben Kingsley character coming back, reprising his role from Iron Man 3, I think has an important moment because he basically apologizes on behalf of
Yeah.
Marvel for
He does.
how the Mandarin was previously treated in Iron Man
Hmm.
3. And I think that was effective and his humor was still good. But you're right, it's just there to
Kind of
like
thrown in there.
take it down a bit,
Yeah.
and yeah.
I did like the Ben Kingsley moment when he's laying on the battlefield and Morris comes up to him
Performance.
and he's like, "It's a performance, play dead with me," or whatever he
Yeah.
says. Great.
Shout out
Um,
Morris, by the way, voiced by D. Bradley Baker, evidently
hmm,
the goat voice actor. And actually, I like that when we finally get to Ta Lo. I thought the labyrinth
yeah.
maze of bamboo forest fighting back really cool.
Hmm.
Once you finally get there and you see all of like these mystical creatures, like the nine-tailed fox, and a lot of like
Yep.
traditional like Asian imagery and stuff, thought that was really cool. Um, and then unfortunately, like Michelle Yao comes up. Always happy to see her, but
Hmm.
she's kind of like forced to do a ton of exposition.
Yeah.
Like all her
It.
lines are just kind of explaining everything to
Yeah.
Shang-Chi and his sister Jialing. So yeah, but still
It.
happy to see her. And yeah, I mean once Tony Long comes back again, like and they start fighting and stuff. Oh man, uh, yeah. Did you have like like, was there like a major set piece that you didn't like? Because I think like the major things like the bus, the fight club, the bamboo forest chase,
Mhm.
even the final fight, minus CGI, I guess. Like I feel like everything worked, everything looks good, you know?
Yeah, I think like it just isn't as interesting when you have, like you said, two big dragons as like the main centerpiece for the
Mhm.
finale of the fight. Um, I I guess also just um it's just thinking about the whole concept of this like portal, right? And that feels like something that's obviously going to be coming back in later Marvel movies. Although Tang Lo is kind of this like, it seems like it's like a Wakanda type uh, place, and it's probably going to be
Yes,
that
like a
that kind of
sanctuary.
role, right? The sanctuary for the next MCU arc. I think it's just also it feels with like everything that's been going on. I know this is maybe not where we wanted to go with the conversation. Like it feels like they're just kind of like harkening back to Mephisto and everything, and they've been kind of dancing around it, dancing around it. We had Kang the Conqueror and um the Loki thing, and like if they're not actually going in the Mephisto direction, the fact that they just keep bringing up these like underworld type creatures as like the big villains, um, I don't
Mhm.
know, just feels a bit whatever. Also, I think is also sorry, I keep saying also uh when the big creature is just kind of like this like nameless villain type of thing that
Yeah,
gets unleashed. It's also kind of hard for me to be like, that's a cool way to end the story. But
right.
I think everything up to that was really really great. Like for Marvel, I'm just trying to think like when's the last time I liked a solo movie this much? I mean, maybe Spider-Man: Far From Home is up there, but I think I like this more. So
Oh, definitely.
I think when
And
I go back to
I
this.
mean, this is the first like real origin story since Captain Marvel. Obviously, this is a lot
Mhm.
better than Captain Marvel.
Yeah,
Um, and that's also what's so great about Shang-Chi and the Legend of Ten Rings is because it's an origin story and it's about as self-contained as the MCU will let a movie be at this point, right? Yes, Wong and Abomination show up briefly. Wong comes back a second time in the end. You get the
right.
post-credit scene, and as you're saying, the stuff about this underworld demon and they kind of nod to other realms, the multiverse. Like there's a lot of like nods if you're listening to it, but for the most part, the movie completely functions as a self-contained thing. And when Marvel movies do that, um, it's usually for the better. And
Mhm.
the post credit scene actually gives me a little bit of pause, right? Because they're like, oh, what's the origins of these rings? We don't know what they are, cosmic of origin, blah blah blah. It's like, it would be nice if the next Shang-Chi movie is grounded again and they get to do more like hand to hand fighting and stuff like that. I don't need Shang-Chi going to space.
Yeah.
I don't need these aliens that perhaps crash landed and brought the rings to Earth. I don't need them coming back. Let's keep it small, but I don't know if they're gonna do that.
Yeah, it's kind of hard once he gets the rings to not use them. So I think that's one of the things I'm kind of sitting with, right? Because when we talk about Loki, and it is kind of cool that we're talking about a Marvel TV show as like a comparison to the movies, but we liked Loki's finale because it was so unexpected. It was just people in a room talking, and I think when you also think about it, the penultimate episode was a big CGI fuckfest.
Correct.
It
Yes.
got to where Marvel has to go, it seems, but the stories just are going to get bigger and bigger, and when it's bigger and bigger, it's going to be more and more CGI. And I just wonder if there's a way for Marvel to back itself out of it at this point. It feels like
I
it's
know.
just too far down the road. So
Yeah. I mean, how far removed are we from your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man? You
yeah.
know?
And actually, I was thinking about that in compare like why all the Spider-Man reboots is because that origin reboot, even though they just yada yada it with Tom Holland's Peter Parker, is cool because he's not super powerful yet. It
Mhm.
is a smaller stakes superhero movie in a lot of ways, a lot of times, and I just don't know if Marvel's ever gonna really give us that again. This felt like as close as it could get with him not having any real superpowers beyond being a amazing martial artist until he got the rings, obviously. So Uh, I don't know. Still a really good Marvel movie. I'd say it probably would be in my top 10 for sure. I had to think about the ranking for it.
I made my list, tentative list, which I feel like it's more instructive to make tiers for Marvel movies. There's 25
Mhm.
at this point,
Yeah.
and I haven't rewatched all of them, but I have this like top five ish, like five, I think. Just because I think the floor is just so high because of all the scenes of Tony Long and the dramatic stuff and all the flashback scenes. Like, I think very few Marvel movies can like really like get to that point, you know.
Mhm.
So I'm really high on it.
Yeah. I gotta think it's probably top 10, maybe top 5 potentially. I'd really have to write it out, but I'll definitely do
Again,
that.
there's
And
so
what
many, it's easy to forget stuff and movies and stuff. But I tend to gravitate
Yeah.
more towards the non big team up Avengers movies
Yeah.
when they're done well.
Oh. Any last thoughts on Shang-Chi?
Um, they said in the final stinger that the Ten Rings organization will return. We now know that
Mhm.
uh, Xialing, his sister, is running it. I wonder if that's setting her up to potentially be like a soft antagonist to
Mhm.
Shang-Chi in the future. On the other hand, maybe it's setting up a Disney Plus show. I guess that's also possible.
Hmm.
I mean, the reason we got Banner and Abomination in this is because they're both going to be in the She-Hulk show coming out next year. Kind of see the lines being drawn. Um, but I liked Jia Ling, and she was also just as competent as Shang Chi as like a
Mhm.
character in the story. So I want to see more of her too.
An
So
even better fighter. She kicked his ass in the ring.
yeah, true. I think the Fight Club scene's so great, right? Like Ronnie
Yeah.
Chang showing up, hilarious,
Yeah.
and then like you have the Wong bit where, yeah, I saw it. That was really good. Um, yeah, I guess I don't have too much more to say. I pleasantly surprised. It's I think Marvel's kind of done it again, right? A character that very few people have any attachment to, very far from an A-list Marvel character, right? Obviously, they
Mhm.
famously did this with Iron Man, in
Yep.
2008, which was not an A-lister at the time, and the Guardians of the Galaxy, you know, Shang-Chi was not super well known, and at the time was kind of just a Bruce Lee ripoff, and
Yeah.
now it's whole new thing, and that's awesome.
Ah, man, it's nice to feel this way about a Marvel movie again because I think I'm trying to think what's the next one that they have coming out. Is it Spider Man again? Has to be right.
Eternals in November, and
Oh
then
right,
Spider-Man in December, and then Doctor
Eternals. I'm
Strange
excited
too.
for too.
Yeah.
These next four are four good ones. So that's pretty cool.
Also, we should note that Shang-Chi completely blew by box office expectations. 75.5 for the 3-day weekend, which is below Black Widow but above F9, and then 94.4 for the 4-day Labor Day holiday weekend, breaking the Labor Day record and having the biggest Monday of COVID box office to this point. So that's really nice to see. This was an exclusive theatrical release and people showed up for it. So we'll see how the subsequent weeks go, but cannot complain about the start.
Absolutely not. We're gonna wrap up there for this week. What should everybody be watching or listening to for next week?
Yeah, so we got the Baby Keem album, as I mentioned yesterday.
Mhm.
Also have the start of American Crime Story Impeachment. So we'll at least check in on that, see what that's like.
Starting tonight.
Yeah. Why the Last Man, FX on Hulu, Monday/Sunday. James Blake album. Uh, Scenes from a Marriage, the HBO miniseries is starting. Paul Schrader's The Card Counter is going to be in theaters. We'll also do our
Hmm.
Emmy predictions because the Emmys are showing up soon. So a lot of good stuff coming up.
Always stuff. Follow us at Nostalgia Pod on Twitter, SoundCloud.com/NostalgiaPod, and YouTube.com/NostalgiaPod.